So, Scott, would you introduce yourself to those that will be watching this? Tell us a little bit about you, your role, and a little bit about Scottsdale Bible Church in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Sure, thanks. I am Scott Anderson. I'm the executive pastor here at Scottsdale Bible. Been here about 8 years, and our church is a multi-site church of, I don't even know how you measure things anymore, but somewhere in the 10,000 people range. We have 4 campuses in the valley, and we are all about winning people to know Jesus, developing them in their faith, and then sending them out to be winners and builders in their own spheres of influence. That's what our mission is, and that's what we feel like we're called to. We're in a unique part of the world, in Scottsdale, one of the most expensive areas to live and work in the country, and it brings its own set of challenging circumstances. But God has placed us here, and we're excited to be a part of what He's calling us to do.
I would love for you if you would take a moment and talk about a little bit about the For the Valley campaign. Um, what was the vision behind that? It was an unusual campaign in that the majority of the money, if not all of it, was not going to stay on the main campus, but was really going to be given out to the three or given away to the three different components. So, talk a little bit about where that came from and why that vision, and then a little bit about what were the challenges then bringing funding to that vision. So, talk about the vision, and then a little bit about the challenges to fund it.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think where it originally started for us was in a leadership team retreat that we took shortly after, as we were coming out of the COVID experience. And our church had been so blessed during that season, financially, attendance-wise. I mean, just unexpected blessings that came in so many different ways. And so we were at a retreat up north in Michigan at our senior pastor's cabin with about, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 of us. And we were trying to really try to answer the question, what's required of us? So much has come out of the unusual growth opportunities that came with COVID. And yet we're still standing, and we're actually thriving in many ways. And so what should we be doing? We're really, really solemnly seeking the Lord's wisdom about what's next. And so out of that came these initiatives. The first one was the easiest one for us, which was to add a couple of additional campuses for our church. At that time, we were a 3-campus church, and we had a vision to become a 5 or 6 campus church. And so part of it was that was a big chunk of the dollars that we would need. But then beyond that, always trying to think, what would God have us to do that are outside of the typical things that we might do. And one of them was just on a real awareness and a burden that we developed for the churches in our community that didn't do as well as we had. There's lots of churches that were on the brink of, teetering on dissolution, actually. And what can we do, and how can we move forward? And so we really wanted to be helpful in that area and be generous and responsive to the needs of our broader church community in the Valley. And then the other one, which was really the hardest one, and the hardest one even for me to get my arms around, was it was brought up in our meeting that there was a significant need in the area of foster care. And right away, I'm like, yeah, there is, but that's not the church. The church doesn't do that. The church is about winning, building, sending, and all of that. And other people take care of that. And we engaged on that topic for quite a while. Where we landed was we need to take about a half hour and just go in our separate corners, pray, seek the Lord's heart, and let's see where we land. And so after a short time of just reflection and prayer, we all came back, and we were all in full agreement that we needed to get involved in foster care in the Valley here. And so it's the least easy thing that you want to move into as a church. It's outside of our area of expertise, but that's how it all came together. And what we realized is this isn't some small thing. We're going to have to raise a lot of money in order to make these things come to life.
So Scott, something you said was very intriguing to me, and that is when many churches didn't fare well during COVID, Scottsdale Bible did. What do you attribute that to?
God's unmerited favor. I mean, I'd love to say we just prayed more. I'd love to say
Yeah.
we were intentional about raising money. It really wasn't any of those things. It's just how God chose to move in our church. And I think going into COVID, we had a lot of things working in our favor. We had just invested heavily in online church capabilities before COVID happened. And so we were in a place where we were able to leverage what we had just put into place, where a lot of churches were just trying to figure out, how do I get on Facebook? And so that helped us in a lot of ways. And of course, we have 200 staff people who can figure things out. And,
Hmm.
we got creative. We pulled back on spending. Of course, part of that was we couldn't do much programming for a while at least. And so we saved money there. And then, we just stayed in contact with our folks regularly. We sent out regular updates. We did the online service. I think we really were given the opportunity to do it well. And that worked to our favor for sure.
Okay. So the churches that maybe didn't fare as well, that was one of the components of the campaign. Um, do you have an example or two of what that would have looked like, or maybe what it has looked like, churches that needed financial help or other help, how this campaign
Yeah.
made that possible?
Well, it's been really a sweet story since we've launched the campaign and moved into the execution phase of this.
Mhm.
Um, we have many stories of churches. The one unique thing about what we're doing is we're not shouldn't say allowing, but we're really not encouraging those churches to go out of their way to say, hey, let's thank Scottsdale Bible Church. We're not putting out news reels or anything about it. We're trying to do it quietly and just, in a way that God would have us do it. But we've helped churches with air conditioning units.
Wow.
They've just become, all they can do is manage to keep their staff paid, and they just don't have the dollars to do some of those capital improvements that they need. So we've given out hundreds of thousands of dollars for that kind of thing. We've hired staff people in their churches for a year to help them, just kind of restabilize after COVID. We helped a couple of churches launch into new buildings and really kind of get the energy behind them to move forward well. It's things like that we've been able to do. But then beyond the dollars, the beautiful thing is we've created a bunch of relationships. So we created 4 teams here at SBC, and my marching orders to them were, I'm not asking you to go out and give away money, though I hope we'll be able to help people financially. I'm asking you to go out and create a relationship with another church and with church leaders. And so they didn't just go in and say, what do you need? Here's a check. They said, tell us about your ministry. They said, tell us where you're struggling. Maybe we can help you. And so we've been connecting with probably 15 or 17 churches now that we never had a relationship with before. And it's, how can we help you with your kids' ministry? And by the way, what are you doing that we need to learn from? And
Mm.
so we're trying really hard to really steward the relationship side of that beyond the financial piece. And that's probably been the most beautiful part of that story, to be honest.
Which is what you wouldn't normally or automatically think would be the beautiful part of the story. You'd think first of the financial, tangible things
Right.
that, and then, but the relational piece is what will last beyond the financial piece. That's
That's it.
Scott, just do you have a couple of any kind of updates, examples on the foster care side? How has that? I mean, most of us think of foster care as a government initiative and all of the bureaucracy that might come along with that. How has that turned out
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't do it because it's so hard. Um, and that's why we needed to step out in faith, because there's no other way we would have done this. We really felt like God was saying, this is what we need. I want you to do. And so it is incredibly challenging. There is a ton of bureaucracy. We do have a foster care group home now, because of the campaign that we've been able to move alongside of. We're their only funding source. So, but like legally they're separate. But we've got between 8 and 10 girls in this particular foster care group home. And, foster care kids who can't fit into the regular foster care system are the ones who end up in the group homes. So these are the hardest of the hard in many ways. And it's extremely, extremely challenging. We're finding our way as we go. But our hope and our dream is that we develop a pipeline that goes from the foster care group home to an SBC family who foster cares them, possibly even to adoption, within the SBC family. And so while we've done the foster care group home, it's only part of a broader plan that we have in place. So we're developing foster care support groups. We've got a group of people whose job, once somebody becomes a foster care family, to go in and look at their house and how can we help you with furniture? How can we make sure that you've got everything you need? We've got people that are volunteering to help with transportation needs. And so we've built this incredibly diverse group of people who have a heart to be helpful, but can't necessarily help in a foster care group home. And we've gone from about 7 or 8 families in our church who are actively fostering, to our knowledge, to about 100 families in our church who are now fostering. And I'm going to get emotional just thinking about that. But that's where God is showing up in such an amazing way. Yeah.
And interesting, Scott, how God is showing up in an amazing way in that part that was the hardest
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the most beautiful of everything we're doing right now in so many ways. And, we're not impacting thousands and thousands of kids or people, but we're impacting what we can impact. And we have a desire to impact more as we continue to grow in this area.
Such a great story.
Yeah.
Have you been able to launch any additional campuses yet? I know you're only a couple of years into this, but has that taken place?
Well, we launched our 4th campus as part of the campaign in a community called Fountain Hills in the valley here. And we've been really pleased and excited for how that's come together. Fountain Hills is kind of an enclosed community. It's a community of, I think it's the community that has the highest level of people who own 3 homes or more. That's Fountain Hills, Arizona. And so it's a very transient community. People come and go really easily. So it's a hard community to reach, but we're excited. We've got about between 300 and 400 people coming every Sunday. We just did VBS in Fountain Hills. Everybody in Fountain Hills is 65 or older. And they're trying to change that, but it's a slow change.
Yeah.
But I think we had 88 kids in VBS in Fountain Hills. So we couldn't be more excited about what God is doing there. We're really excited for how that growth is going and all of that. And then our next campus is slated to break ground here in about October of this year. It's a renovated facility that we've purchased. It was a previous church, but it was in a strip mall, basically. And so we're tearing down about a third of the building and rebuilding it as a worship center so we can get the right heights and all that. And then, the rest of it is going to be renovated. And we'll be able to develop, hopefully grow a church there of 1,500 to maybe 2,500 over time in the community of Tempe, Arizona. So we're very excited about that.
So all of these just great stories, what God is doing through Scottsdale Bible and the generosity of the people, the amazing visionary leadership that the church has. But there was a price tag to all of this. Talk a little bit, if you will, Scott, about how you came up with a number. Tell us what the number was, how you came up with it, and just any kind of metrics or analytics that might have been connected to the number itself.
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is an elder meeting that we had where we started unpacking what we were dreaming about for the future. And one of the elders in the room said, that's going to be a $40 million price tag. And Jamie, our senior pastor, said, no, it's not. We're not doing, that's nope, we're not doing that. And but as we continued to talk and pray and dialogue about it, it really did become a project on that scope. And then the question became, do we do and honestly, you have people on all sides of these kinds of things, this, but we have people that said, let's break it up into 2 campaigns of $20 million each. Let's not kill ourselves over this. This is going to be hard and all of that. And Joel, me, I'm going, let's go for it all. God is in it. He's going to fund it. And so you've got this dialogue that's going on. And that's about the time that we brought Horizons in to the conversation. And thankfully, I think we landed on a goal of $35 million over 3 years. That was made up of roughly 20%. So $7 million of that was going to be for the foster care and the helping other churches. And then the other 80% was going to be utilized for the campus expansion plans. A lot of discussion and planning and preparing. And after we brought Horizons in and the help that you gave us to help structure this and help us, part of, I think, what's helpful when you bring somebody who doesn't attend your church in to help with this is that you really get the perspective of a lot of experiences rather than just your own personal experience. And so, we were able, with the help of Horizons and you, to really help us, land where we needed to land, and a God-sized goal where we're trusting God for a lot, but not unreasonable in the eyes of people, not too big unreasonable and not too small unreasonable. I mean, in fact, we're a very large church. We should be doing big things. And so that's where I think we got a lot of help initially to help us land where we landed.
So Scott, how many capital campaigns have you been a part of in your ministry, roughly?
Yeah, I would imagine this is probably my 8th campaign that I've been connected to in a pretty strong way.
And Scottsdale has done 4 or 5, I guess, over the life of their church, of that church.
Yeah.
So clearly, within the church, the understanding of how campaigns work, and the skill set to do it yourselves. You mentioned, bringing in an outsider, but what was it maybe that made you all decide, we could do this ourselves, we could do it internally, we've got the people to do that, but we want to bring in an outside person to help us through this process. What was that conversation like? Because I'm sure somebody had to have said, we could do this ourselves, can't we? Do we really need to bring someone else in?
Yeah, and I've done some campaigns on my own, just with our church over those campaigns that I've been a part of too. And I think there's sometimes reasons to do it that way. I think, when we're talking about something that's a bit beyond our capacity, that's really, deeply felt within us, but not feeling like we've got the same team around us that we had when we did the last one, or not feeling like we understood fully what the new realities are with what's going on financially, economically in people's lives, how they're looking at giving, what stewardship looks like. Having somebody come in and look at your church more broadly, and understanding, when, how do I want to say this? Understanding how much stewardship development has already been done versus is this a pretty green group of people? All of those things need to be played out in order to help you land in a way that gives you the best chance to win.
Okay. So Scott, the number was 35 million. The last report that I saw from Susie was just north of 36 million now in pledges and gifts. What was more amazing to me uh, was the number of new givers since Commitment Sunday. Over 1,000 new givers since the big commitment event, Pledge Sunday. Um, can you attribute that to anything unique that maybe that's an unusually large number? What are you all doing that you think is bringing new givers in like they've come to the campaign?
Well, I'd like to say it's because we're always talking about it and we're, constantly reminding people, every time you get into the follow-up phase, you say, we're going to do all these things. And every time you do that, you end up doing a level of those, but usually not all of them, just because other things get in the way. But I will say we've been pretty intentional at points within the follow-up phase time period that we've been in to tell a story, to remind people what's happening. The nice thing about what it's been for us is, it's not just one building that we're funding, it's opportunities throughout this 3 years that we can tell a story. So we did a video story on one of the churches we helped and
Okay.
just, hey, thanks for the way you're funding for the Valley because this happened because of it. When we opened our Fountain Hills campus, we were able to celebrate that as a church and remind people this is a For the Valley thing. And so it's worked out probably better for us than any other campaign I've ever been in, where they've been these natural opportunities to go, hey, we should tell people about what happened there. When we paid off the mortgage for the group home that we had, we celebrated that with the church. And in many ways, that's helped us a lot to keep it in front of people. So I think that's probably mostly what it is.
And Scott, do you all intentionally invite people if they've not had a chance to participate? Here's how you can be a
Yeah.
part of this
Yeah,
campaign.
we do. Yeah, we do remind people about the opportunity to get involved if you're not involved. Every one of those stories as we come out of it, it's very quick. It's maybe less than a minute, but it celebrates it and it thanks the people who are giving and challenges people who aren't involved yet to get involved. And usually we have on the side screens the opportunity to so they know how to do it.
Scott, any lessons learned that if there's going to be another campaign somewhere out there, here's what we learned from For the Valley that we want to be sure maybe do differently or do again the same way. So, any takeaways from the For the Valley campaign?
I would say one of the most important things is you will not do as well alone as you will do with help. You just will not. And even the campaigns that we've done in my previous church where we just did it in-house, we did it that way because we didn't have a big need. And it was an easy thing for us to do. If you're going after big things, you need help. And don't kid yourself. You need the help, and you will easily get back what you pay out when you engage the services of an organization, like Horizons, to get the work done. So that's one thing. I say the second thing is when you do engage an external partner, the beauty of it is they keep calling you. Did you do this? Did you make this happen? Tell me what, there's an element of accountability, especially in the follow-up, that we just need because we get overwhelmed with the day-to-day stuff and we forget about it. And so the value of having somebody, even in the developing and the campaign season itself, having somebody help you and hold you accountable to what you say you want to do is really almost priceless. So that's the one thing I would say. The next thing I would say is if you're not bold and courageous in what you're trying to accomplish, don't bother. It's not worth doing it if you're not passionate and you don't believe that God is calling it to you. If it's not making you uncomfortable to think about doing it, then you better think about it some more and pray about it some more because God didn't call you to do some little dinky thing. So you got to go after it. And if you're not at a point where it's really beyond you and making you sick once in a while, it's probably not what you're supposed to be doing yet.
Someone recently said, and it's just been on my heart constantly since I heard it, is the greatest work of the Holy Spirit is just outside our comfort zone.
Absolutely. So true.
Mm.
It's so true. Every time I've done it a lot. Every time we've done it, it's pushed me beyond my comfort zone and then some. and when you go through that initial phase of campaign results and pledges coming in, and you're like, oh, we're not going to make it. And that's all part of it. That's all part of it. It's part of the way that God works in me as a leader, in addition to the way he works through the congregation and all of that. So it's important.
Well, and it kind of reminds me what we were talking about earlier about the greatest challenge in the For the Valley campaign was the foster care. Um, Yet that may be where the Holy Spirit has done the most incredible work, and that took for sure Scottsdale Bible outside of their comfort zone. But so I'm reminded all the time that boy, don't be afraid to go outside your comfort zone, because that's where the greatest work of the Holy Spirit often resides. Any final words of advice that you might share with churches that are listening to this, that are thinking about doing something that may take them outside their comfort zone?
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people on this topic. I talked to a church up in the Northwest not too long ago. I think I ended up connecting them with you. But,
Yes.
Here's the deal. They have this need to do something, and, they can do it. It's not a big deal. They can make it happen. They can do a little campaign. They can do, and I just challenged him and said, I think God wants more for you. And by the way, often in many churches, this is the only time that you intentionally talk vision. And it's kind of sad that that's true, but there's a reality to that, is that when you force yourself to do a campaign, you're forcing yourself as an organization to focus on what you're called to do most. And you have to communicate that to people, and you have to build that out. And if you haven't done a campaign, a lot of churches and pastors have never talked vision in the way that they would if they did a campaign. So I think that's important for people to know. I think when I have never regretted engaging an external partner when it comes to this thing, because they need to tell me those things over and over again, because I've got a kids ministry to manage. I've got a student ministry to manage. I've got adults who are all messed up because of politics and all of this. And so reminding us in the midst of a campaign that before you go out and say a dollar amount, you got to talk to people about who you are. We never did that until I got somebody externally who said, are you doing that? So really important pieces, I think, come together when you bring somebody from the outside to make this happen.